So my talk is about, first of all, hello, my name is Marcel. I'm from Germany, I'm still a student, and yes. My talk is about Spawny, and what Spawny is basically nothing else than a service which is offering you login capabilities. You might now say that this sounds familiar from something like FOSDEM, and yes, it's basically the same, but how it works is differently. And the basic approach of this whole thing is that we are trying to unify how a user logs in and how a developer logs in. And how I've seen it in the past few years is usually a developer of a window manager goes to a TTI, logs in using a getty, and has a clean session. And the user has his daemon like XDM or entrance or LightDM and logs in using a UI. And there we have a little problem, because on something like LightDM you might not start the window manager in a clean session like the developer starts it using a TTI running startx, because he has a fresh X server, etc., etc. So the basic approach is to unify this. And so the idea is there should not be a difference between you logging in from a virtual terminal using a getty or using Spawny and a graphical user interface to log in. And how this works is basically by copying how a getty works on a normal system. So what a getty does is it sets up the virtual terminal for you, it sets up the file descriptor 0, 1, and 2 for you, so standard in, standard out, and standard error, and just passes this on to the next process. So what Spawny does in the internal things is there's a daemon which is doing one set of operation, and the daemon is forking into a new process. This process logs in a user using PAM. After that it acquires a new virtual terminal, it sets the correct user permissions on it, it sets the correct file descriptors, and then it just starts a binary. For example, the greeter binary for bringing up a greeter, or a binary like Western, or a binary like startx to run an X server. And what you can see here now is already we don't depend anymore on the architecture of X. So it doesn't matter for this system if you're starting a Wayland compositor, or if you're starting X compositor, X window manager, or even just a plain bash on your virtual terminal without involving any graphical device. And as those systems are working, at some point you need a place where you can interact with the user, and this is usually called, for me, the greeter. And Spawny itself only carries a text mode greeter. This means what you see on your screen is just a text mode virtual terminal, so without graphical output, just the normal characters as you see them on boot. And the reason for doing this is, on one side, I didn't want to pull in any major toolkit into Spawny itself. Spawny itself should stay as tiny as possible so it could get integrated in many different places really easily. And the other positive point about this is we are having a binary that can be used for logging in users for the case that a graphical mode of a virtual terminal fails. So I'm sitting quite often in front of my work laptop after I update, and sitting in front of a black screen because some driver issue happened and LightDM cannot come up anymore and cannot draw anything on the screen. So the idea here is, and what Spawny actually does is, it checks if the greeter is really starting up successfully, a graphical mode greeter for example, and if this is not happening for, let's say, 2 times, it starts the fallback greeter, which is the text mode greeter. So in the end we are promising the user in some kind that he's always ending up with a lock screen which is working. Probably not looking nice, but it's at least working. For example, for the case of a driver issue, he can then drop to his bash, fix his system, reboot, and he is back at the graphical system, so in the best case. However, since users like nice UIs, there's also the possibility of a graphical greeter. This graphical greeter is outside of the main repository, it's in a different repository. The greeter is called Anna and looks like this. It's using EFL as graphical output and runs there in a plain DRM session on the virtual terminal. However, the special thing on this greeter is how it uses Spawny. So the big story packed in a short sentence is Spawny is using Messen. Messen is a build system, I don't know, maybe one or the other knows it. And Messen has one wonderful feature, and this is you can include other Messen projects in your own project, and this is what Anna does. So for example, on a distribution where you don't have many packages and you don't have a new software like Spawny, you can just deploy your greeter by using Spawny in your repository. So the distribution only would have to deploy your greeter and not also Spawny and your greeter. For example, for me on Arch Linux, this means I can have a single user Arch Linux repository build script which builds me the greeter, and I can just deploy it like this to the users without forcing them to build two packages, which is way easier. The good thing also on Spawny is you can just execute in the end a binary which sets the default greeter to some path. So in the end, for the user, for an end user, he doesn't see at all that there's something happening in the background with composing two pieces of code. However, this started for me like a little research project. So I wanted to improve how the normal login screens on Linux work, and I wanted to have something that doesn't depend on something like GTK or Qt or Elementary, so many projects can use one base. And so since this is a research project somehow for me, there are a few future goals where I would like to work on and where I wanted the project to go. For example, one thing that I've recognized and already said before, there are sometimes greeter hang-ups in terms of the greeter, so, in terms of the driver. So the driver has some kind of issue and cannot get further or back, and this would be something that I would like to monitor. So somehow that the greeter detects if there is a graphical issue and just exits in himself, or Spawny kills the greeter, so the user in the end again ends up with a usable system instead of a locked system. Also, what is missing right now, but I want to have implemented, is support for finger readers or smart card readers or anything like this. Right now this is not working because on the one side I don't have the hardware to test, and on the other side I've checked it once and there it was Pam starting some X windows that you were seeing in your X session. And since for example, a greeter like Anna runs in a DRM session and not in an X session, we don't have the possibility to bring such a window up, so this is missing. And the other research project I was thinking of was to get a secret lock screen, which was something like, do not only use the greeter for logging a user in, but also for locking a session back. So if you're locking your session, you don't see the compositor bringing up a password field, but rather get back to the greeter in the beginning, and you have to log in again to get back to your session, which would be somehow a bit cleaner because session itself does not need to implement something like a lock screen again. However, this was basically it. The takeaway from this should be, in the end, Spawny is nothing else than a graphical front end for using a greeter, and a greeter is the standard way for a long time logging into a Linux system, for example. The focus is on keeping a responsive system to the user, so no one is ever forced to do a USB boot or something like this to get his system back up working, and this whole thing is independent from the X server, so we can start any session in it. Yeah, that's basically it. Any questions? No? Good. Yes?
I think you said one advantage of Nizon was that it was self-contained in the build system, so installing an app that used it would just install that package and build it.
Yes.
From just a point of view, that's not an advantage. That's a bit pain in the arse that we prefer to avoid. That's embedded third-party applications.
That was the short story. The long story is you can decide if you want to have it in two packages or in one.
It's easy for you to package it when it doesn't exist.
Yes, exactly. That was the use case, so you just keep it easy for the user for deploying it. Yes?
That the service run as root, or how?
The architecture is like you have a daemon in the middle, so to say, which is called SP daemon. That is running as root and outside any session, so it can create other sessions which are recognized by something like login. And as this forking is happening, then the forks are running in the users where you are logging in. And for example, the greeter itself is running in a user that doesn't have a home directory, or I think it has a home directory, but this is an empty directory. It does not have rights to do anything basically at all. And so yes, the base thing is running as root because this is needed to all the stuff, but in the end, the lock screen for the user is not running as root. No.
Just wanted to say, developers like me always use a login manager. I don't use StartX, and I've done that for 20 plus years building window managers. So I'm not sure your description of.
Yeah, okay, but it was a quick question on IRC, and there have been already many which said, okay, yeah, TTI logging in StartX.
Okay, person who writes window managers doesn't. Yeah, but they're silly.
Are there other questions? Marcel, thank you very much.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
You might want to